One Friday at work, my son called me, and he said, "Do you feel like going on a road trip?" And I said, "When? This weekend?" And he goes, "No, tonight." I said, "Tonight? In work traffic? We'll get to wherever we're going at about 2 in the morning." He said, "That's about the right time." I said, "What? Where are we going?" He goes, "Someplace dark. Any place dark." I said, "Josh, what's going on?" He goes, "Well, I have an app on my phone, and it's saying that the Milky Way is overhead tonight, and I want to take pictures." So we did it. We went up to the top of Mount Palomar. The problem is when we got there, I was looking up. "I don't see anything, Josh. It's not here." He goes, "It's there. It's there, Dad. Count on it." And when he said count on it, it reminded me of Psalm 19. Let me see if I can get this to work. Whoops, that's the wrong way. It reminded me of Psalm 19. The reason it reminded me of Psalm 19 is because King David in the psalm, he starts talking about how things, when it comes to God, are trustworthy and solid and true and pure. And so when I heard my son say, "It's there, count on it," the certainty in his voice, that's what reminded me of Psalms 19. The certainty. And what Josh said, he says, "We'll do a long exposure on my camera." And sure enough, it was there. I don't know if this really brings it out. Anyways, it was indeed there, just as Josh said, and more importantly, just as King David said. We're just going to go through Psalm 19. I'm going to try to keep it to 30 minutes, so we'll stop. I'll try to find an appropriate place to stop. Psalm 19, as it says, for the choir director, a psalm of David. David wrote this psalm with the intention of it being sung, with the intention of the word, the message, the praise that he had. He had the intention of it being heard. Interestingly enough, thousands of years later, we're in America, a whole bunch of Gentiles for the most part, and we're singing. We sung it this morning, just now, or at least a portion of it. Psalm 19 it'll touch a little bit on the transcendence of God. The transcendence of God is bigger than the universe. He created the universe. He was here before the universe. Psalm 19 is God is not restricted or confined to the universe. God is above it. He's outside of it. He's gigantic. It doesn't matter how big the universe is. I think the Webb telescope is letting the scientists know it's even bigger than what they thought. But God is bigger than the universe. Psalm 19 will also touch on what's called the transcendence of God, or that is the transcendence, the being big and gigantic and outside of the universe. But it will also touch on what's called the immanence of God. The immanence is, even though God is outside of the universe and much bigger than it, God's immanence is that he's close to us. He wants to be next to us. He wants to have a relationship with us. And so David, just a little bit, is going to touch on that. But one thing to point out, as we read through the scriptures, we will see that when we read many times about the transcendence of God, how gigantic God is, how much he's outside of the universe, many times we'll see immanence of God right next to the transcendence. Just very quickly, I'll touch on this. The shepherds in the field at Jesus' birth, they looked up and saw the angelic army of angels announcing the birth of the Christ. What a glorious experience that must have been, the power, looking up into the heavens and seeing God's army of angels announcing the birth of the Christ. We see the transcendence, the powerful God. But then at the same time, they said, hey, there's a sign for you. It's going to be a baby, wrapped in simple swaddling cloth. And he'll be laying in an animal's feeding trough as a makeshift bed. How much more imminent can you get when it comes to the common man? And so this is just one example of seeing the transcendence and the imminence together. And it's interesting, as we get into Psalm 19, that David's going to show it too. So we have the transcendence and the imminence of God that David is going to use. We also have what's referred to as, let me grab my notes now, general revelation. We're going to see that verses 1 through 6 have to do with general revelation. And this is the idea that God can be revealed. In fact, he does reveal himself in other ways than just, say, a prophet, say his written revelation, say the apostles, say Jesus, say the Holy Bible. That's a different kind of revelation. There's a more general revelation that David is going to bring up. And we'd be wise to listen to it. And I have a personal example that I'll give for that. So we're going to see the general revelation, verses 1 through 6. Then we're going to get the verses 7 through 14, and that has to do with specific revelation. Specific revelation, Jesus is the best. But then we have the writings of the apostles. They sat at the feet of Jesus, the dust of the rabbi. They're authoritative. And we have the Bible, the written word. This is specific revelation. And so, as we know this now, let's step into it. Verses 1 through 6. Let me see if I can get, I got to go in the right direction. Verses 1 through 6. The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Verse 1 is showing what's called the transcendence of God. It's the work of his hands, the creation. God was here before the creation. God created the creation. And some of the translations will say his handiwork, kind of indicating that it wasn't that big of a deal to God in terms of what it took to be able to create for him. Day after day, they pour forth speech. Night after night, they reveal knowledge. This is the idea when Josh told me, Dad, it's there, count on it. This is the same thing that David's getting at. He says this general revelation that's happening, it happens every night and every day. It happens all the time. Whoever created that app that my son had, they knew it would work in terms of forecasting and knowing where the constellations are and everything else in the sky. Because the way that God is ordered. God is in control. God-like structure. Structure brings about peace. And so anyways, we're already seeing what David is doing. David is saying, hey, I look up in the stars, and you know what I see? I see a God who can make all this. I see a powerful God. You know also what I see? I see order and structure. He says, these constellations, these stars, the heavens, they have no speech that we know of. They use no words, no sound is heard from them, yet their voice goes out into all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. God has pitched a tent for the sun, the giant, powerful sun that I can't even look at directly. God's pitched a tent for it. God has it in a set path. God has it in a set order. It doesn't matter how big and powerful the sun is, God is in control of it. The sun is proud. It's like a bridegroom coming out of his chamber, like a champion rejoicing to run his course. It rises at one end of the heavens and makes its circuit to the other. Nothing is deprived of its warmth. And yet God transcends it. God is in control of it. This is an example of general revelation. Paul the Apostle brings out that all humans are accountable to God. If for no other reason, because of general revelation. Romans 1:20, for since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood through what has been made, so that they are without excuse. This is why God can hold us accountable. More general revelation. For when Gentiles, Romans 2, verses 14 through 15, for when Gentiles who do not have the law instinctively, or do instinctively the things of the law, these not having the law are a law to themselves, in that they show the work of the law written in their hearts, their conscience bearing witness, and their thoughts alternately accusing or else defending them. What are you saying, Paul? Are you saying I don't need a degree from seminary to be held accountable by God? And he says, yes, you don't. You were born in a way in which God gave you a moral compass, and God holds us accountable. Proverbs 3:19. There are many verses when it comes to intelligent design. I just chose this one. The Lord by wisdom founded the earth. By understanding he established the heavens. Intelligent design is general revelation. Now, personal account. At a very young age, my daughter started asking strange questions. In fact, I would even ask her, how did you even think of such a question? As I knew all the time that her brain was constantly learning, never ever stopping. And I realized she's heading toward the sciences, and I knew what was out there. People who were convicted in their atheism, some of the people who followed it because their jobs depended upon professing that there is no God. I knew what professors were waiting out there. And so it scared me, and I started thinking, what do I do? Because I know where she's going to wind up. And indeed she did. She wound up being a chemist. And so as a little girl, I could tell where she was going, and I didn't know what to do. And the strange thing is, I didn't turn so much to specific revelation. I found myself turning to general revelation. I found myself buying and reading books on intelligent design. And along the way, I learned about something called natural law. And this is the idea that, and really C.S. Lewis, his book Abolition of Man and Mere Christianity. Mere Christianity is more about objective morality, but it's close enough to natural law. Anyways, in reading those works, I started learning more about, hey, we really do have a moral compass that God gave each and every one of us. I didn't need to be trained in a religion, that I know good and well when I've been wronged. I don't need anyone to tell me that hurt. And so the more I started learning about this, and I kept, as Rebecca was growing up, and sure enough, going more and now into high school and in the science classes and then off to college and all of that, I kept beating into her head intelligent design, which is part of general revelation, and natural law, which is again general revelation. It finally got to the point where she said, Dad, stop, we're on the same team. So, anyways, and now she went off to graduate school, and then I was really petrified, and I said, well, that's it. Now she's moved out of the house. I can't talk to her every night, and that's it. I don't know what else to do. So, anyways, as graduate school went on, and then eventually when she got her job in the sciences, research, I learned something. There's way more scientists in the world that believe in God than what the fallen world would have us believe. There are a lot of them out there. It's really just the academic world that keeps them quiet. But I actually found out that where she went off to work, and there were a lot of Christians there that were right there working alongside of her. Don't be too quick to believe the fallen world. So anyways, that's my dealing with general revelation. Young parents, if you have kids that are showing signs of being heavy into the sciences, you may want to invest in learning intelligent design and natural law as a general revelation. Now, the other thing that I know, one other thing that I will say, as time went on, I found the thing that really Rebecca connected to, it wasn't intelligent design at all. It was the natural law part. It was the part of knowing that the idea of right and wrong, and knowing when I've wronged someone or I've been wronged, again, it's not trained. It's in us. It's the way God made us. It's Christianity that calls it out. And it says clearly, this is sin when you mistreat someone, and this is love when you treat them right. Boy, time goes by fast. So onward we go, I think. Oh, there it goes. So now in verse 7 to verse 14, Peter changes gears. And as a kid, I always wondered, why, David, what are you doing? Why do you go from talking about the stars and the heavens and the sun to now talking about God's law? I never understood until I got older and started studying it, realizing that the two are definitely connected. They're connected in a number of different ways, actually. But the one we're focusing in on today is the fact that he shifts from general revelation to specific revelation. Specific revelation is where he's going to focus in on is the Word of God, and specifically the commands and the precepts and the law, the testimony, which is synonymous with law. And so he's going to step through this, and very quickly we will step through and get through as much as we can. I do want to say one thing, though. In the many veins of Psalm 19, there is one, and I said, I'm not going there today, but I had to because of Neil's Lord's Supper talk and what was said in the prayer about I wish we could stay in the garden. It's my speculation, and I just want you to take this through when you go back and read Psalm 19. I get the feeling that David is answering the serpent in the garden. I get the feeling that a lot of Psalm 19 David had in mind of how he would have answered the serpent. This is just my speculation. He says in verse 7, now we're dealing with specific revelation from God. The law of the Lord is perfect, refreshing the soul. The statutes of the Lord are trustworthy, making wise the simple. Well, I was raised in the church, and being raised in the church, I learned at a very young age about how Jesus fulfilled the prophecies, all kinds of reasons to believe that Jesus is indeed the Messiah, that believe in Christianity. And so I was a young teenager. I was a smart aleck. I was very hyperactive. And one night at a small groups Bible class, it came up. I think the Buttreys had to leave, but Dan brought up, be ready to give, be prepared to give an answer for anyone who asks. And that's 1 Peter 3:15, if I remember correctly. Anyways, the one leading the class said, hey, everybody, let's practice this. We're going to go around the room, and everybody give an answer for why you believe. And I was sitting there in the know-it-all stage of my life, and I got this. And I started thinking about what I'm going to say. There was another gentleman in the class. He hadn't been a Christian for very long. And he had a very hard look to him. And I thought, wait a minute, he hasn't been a Christian long enough. He doesn't know. How could he know all this, all the Bible knowledge? How could he know? He can't. So when it came to his turn, so why do you believe? I paid all the more attention, and I've never forgot his answer. He said, well, I've seen the other side of the tracks. And it's not true what sin is supposed to be. It's not true. It doesn't work out. It's not right. I finally listened to the Christians. And that's why I'm a Christian today. And that's why I believe. David's right. The law of the Lord does refresh the soul. And as for being trustworthy and making wise the simple, well, how does it make someone simple like me wise? Jesus said on the Sermon on the Mount, therefore, whoever hears these sayings of mine and does them, I will liken him to a wise man who built his house on the rock. That's true too. I know that from living life. The times I listen, the times I get out of trouble, or better yet, never see it. The times I haven't listened, trouble. Jesus is right and David is right. The word, the statutes do make us wise. Well, we're running out of time. Let's just try to do a couple more. The precepts of the Lord are right, giving joy to the heart. The commands of the Lord are radiant, giving light to the eyes. A precept is not a principle, it's not a guideline, it's a set in stone command. Now, the interesting thing about precepts, Sharon's a teacher, my wife is a teacher, and she's taught different ages over the years, and I've heard this a few times from her. The kids like structure. It's safety. It makes them feel secure. That's what this is. The precepts of the Lord are right. The idea of the set in stone commands, we have a very good visual of it on Mount Sinai, of the Ten Commandments written in stone, and also we have Terry's shirt. The Ten Commandments are not multiple choice. Very good. The idea here is, as this new nation, God's people were setting out, the Israelites in the Exodus, they hit Mount Sinai, and one of the first things God gives them is precepts, structure, order. This is what is needed for stability, and this is what we see here. It does give joy to the heart, and that word heart, if you look up it in Strong's Concordance, that word heart means way more than just the heart. It also includes the mind, the spirit, feelings, the soul, all of it. I can attest to the truth of this. The commands of the Lord are radiant, giving light to the eyes. That's one here I have another example of, very, very quickly. Years ago, I had to do parking lot duty at a congregation I was at. It was during that time when all the violence was happening to the churches. And I had just been studying this verse the night before. And Sunday morning, it came my turn to do the parking lot duty, and a car that I'd never seen before pulled up right up front and had extremely tinted windows, illegally tinted. I couldn't see in at all. I'd never seen that car before, and the worst part of all, the person wasn't getting out of the car, and so my mind went into a panic. Do I go get, we had some first responders in the congregation. Do I go get them? What do I do? I wish I could see into the car, but my eyes could not. And thought of that verse that I'd read the night before. It was very strange, but the car just wound up leaving. Never saw the car again. But it made me think of what cops go through when they can't see into the windows. And I was thinking of this verse again. But with God, with the commandments of God, He doesn't hide anything from us. The commandments are there to give light to us, to give us spiritual discernment. And again, this is very true. The fear of the Lord is pure, enduring forever. The decrees of the Lord are firm, and all of them are righteous. We'll do one more verse after this. The first time in my life that I ever desired, truly desired, for someone to fear God was when they were dating my kids. Both of my kids started dating at about the same time. And I was very concerned. And the problem is my kids kept coming home with cupids in their eyes. And I knew this is probably the worst thing they could have. Because if there is something that needs to be seen, those cupids are going to block it. And so without thinking, it just came out of my mouth. And that's when I knew it was from my spirit. Both of them, they were in the front room. And I said, hey, you guys need to knock the cupids out of your eyes. And you need to start looking to see if the person has a concern for God or a reverent fear for God. And that's when I finally got the verses that talk about the fear of God. I don't care if the kid's good looking. I don't care if they're smart. I don't care about that. My spirit said, do they care about God? Do they fear Him? Do they have a reverent fear? Do they have a reverent concern for God or not? So now I finally understood. So I attest that verse 9 is true as well. David, you're right. You're absolutely right. But for time's sake, I need to... Here we go. We'll end with verse 10. Like I said, when I was going back and reviewing for this sermon, I started seeing a number of areas where if David were just there with Adam and Eve, if he were just there, maybe we'd still be in the garden. You see, because Eve said, or it says about Eve in Genesis 6, or Genesis 3, verse 6, it says, this is regarding the temptation. It says, so when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree desirable to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate. But wait a minute. David says there's something even better to the eyes. David says there's something even more tantalizing to the eyes, like pure gold. David says, I know what really tastes good. It tastes sweeter than honey, sweeter than the honeycomb, and it's the Word of God. If David were there, maybe we'd still be in the garden. So, if anyone is thinking about becoming a Christian or wants to become a Christian today, we have everything ready. You can repent of your sins. You can confess that you believe in Jesus, believe in God, and you can be baptized today. So if anyone is subject to the invitation or needs anything, please come forward.